Hello Giants fans, welcome to Giants Baseball 101. I'm Gabe Vaughn, your host. The Giants lost to the Royals today, 3-0. Tristan Beck went 4 innings, he gave up 3 runs. He's not going to make the opening day roster. How much he'll contribute in 2023, it remains to be seen. Right now, the purpose of his outings is really just to get his work in. I don't think the Giants really expect him to be ready to fill in on the Major League roster at any time in the near future, but I definitely would expect him to be up at some point before September, and likely in September he'll be one of the 2 extra call-ups that are allowed, but I think before then he will contribute to the Giants at some point. Exactly when, though, I'm not sure about. Melvin Adon pitched a scoreless inning today, and when he's going to get to the big leagues is another big question, because I'm a bit confused on him, because I thought he was supposed to make his big league debut a while ago. And whether it was an injury, whatever it was, I'm not exactly sure, but right now I'm not sure what the timetable for him is going to be, because he has a hard-throwing prospect reliever, which those guys, we understand that flame throwing is not all that it is. Command is the other side to it, and when that's not there, what you really get is a bunch of walks and a bunch of hitters who take advantage of pitcher power. But still, it's going to be great for the Giants organization to keep raising those flame-throwing relievers in their farm system, because they can just get their work in, and when guys do turn out right, like Camilo Doval did, despite his struggles on coming to the big leagues in 2021. He became their closer and had 20 scoreless appearances, something like that, something along those lines that year, and he's got a proven ability to strike hitters out, but I'm not sure that even now he's reached his full potential as a Giant. We could see even better from him in 2023. I think that he's got even better to get, and it's just the way with these hard-throwing pitchers. You know, they could have the same velocity and look tough and all that, but sometimes command is going to make all of the difference for them. So I think I want to keep seeing these guys, these hard throwers. I think particularly relievers, since they'll let out all their energy when they come in. I mean, it'd be the case with starters too, but I really focus on relievers when I'm looking at exceptionally hard-throwing pitchers, usually because they can expend all their energy on a single game. So that I would say that's where things stand with Melvin Adon. He's still going to be a real hard-throwing prospect for the Giants, and when they need him, to me, he should probably contribute this year if nothing sidelines him and he performs at least decently in AAA. The Giants didn't score any runs today. Ford Proctor had 2 hits, including a double, and David Villar as well had 2 hits. Villar's average is down right now, just so you know, when we're talking about guys like Casey Schmidt, who's just bombing it this spring training. I mean, if Villar needs to be on the bench, and it still probably would seem unfair to Villar to have him on the bench if things have just kind of gone normally with these other prospects in spring training, because Villar, he really was great when he came up with the Giants in 2022 overall. I mean, his weighted on base average was in the 340s, which he was a consistent. Well, I mean, he started out on kind of a cold streak, but just overall, he was an above-average performer for the Giants in 2022. And really to say, I think for Villar that he's not playing well just out of the small spring training sample, there is kind of an unfairness to it, but I think this is just one of those situations where the Giants have to look at the best that they've got, which Casey Schmidt seems to be that guy right now who's the best option to start at third base. So I'm not at all saying that because David Villar's average is down, it means he's going to open the year struggling and he doesn't deserve to be a starter. I'm just saying I think that he fits in behind Casey Schmidt, and because of what Schmidt's doing right now, he's actually earned the starting third base role, unless there's some significant reason that I don't know about why Schmidt would have to continue his development, or why it would be too early for him at this point to get to the big leagues, or he's facing weak competition, or whatever reason I haven't thought of. And you don't want to push guys into the big leagues too early. I'm not saying that at all. It just seems like he's performed well enough as to really have stated his case for the opening day roster, but the Giants, they'll have to make that decision. So unless there's a good reason not to rush him, it is Casey Schmidt, I believe, who's earned the starting role, and VR would have to play behind him on the bench, and I don't have a problem with that based on the fact that the Giants are and should be looking for immediate productivity to start the season, so they can, 2022, that their strength was that they started the season hot. It was later they fell off, and that's what they did in 2021 as well, except it was even hotter. It's really unlike, I would say, what they did in 2019 and 2020. They didn't start either of those seasons hot, but each season has a different pattern to it, and whether you think that looking at a team's performance in a small streak, whether you think that's more random and all that really tells you stuff is the performance overall in the season, or whether you think that's what makes everything up for the team. The Giants, I think if they start out well, we can certainly hope for the best better in the remainder of the season. In 2022, it didn't work that way. They fell off in July, and that cannot happen again. But the first few games of 2023, just going to feel a lot better if the Giants can really win them and get at least a good start to things. So the question you'd have to ask about these guys, and this goes for prospects like Blake Sabol as well. The question is, are they going to be consistent all season? Or it's not unheard of for a real good prospect to, and this was, I'm just going to give an example. This was the case with Joey Bart last year. It absolutely was the case with him. I'm sure Bart wasn't the only one. I just don't know what I can think offhand. Maybe Tyro Estrada too, although I think Estrada was pretty much solid overall in 2022. But definitely the case with Joey Bart. He was hot, real hot to begin 2022. But was he that great looking at the season as a whole? No. He cooled off. He even had to be sent to the minors a couple of times. I just think his season in 2022 is a good example of what can happen. You can have a prospect who he'll open the season, he will legitimately be really hot. Then, whether because pitchers just figure out how to pitch to him, and he's not developed enough, he's not an overall inherently good enough player to be able to adjust to it, or just that he plain cools off or whatever, he gets worse in the middle of the season and, well, all the good performance goes away. That can happen, and it's, I don't think we can even say that Blake Sabol, as good as he's been this spring training, is beyond any possibility of this phenomenon happening to him. Especially since spring training is only a little over a month long as it is. And you don't see really too much. It's a large enough sample that he's proven his case. I think that best of all the options the Giants have, he should make the opening day roster. And same thing with Casey Schmidt, same thing with Bryce Johnson, who appeared in, I believe, 11 games for the Giants in 2022. Just want to be aware that there's always the possibility for guys who start the season hot. And I really see it working that way with hitters and pitchers. Sometimes that can be what separates, I don't know what you'd call it, a flashy player, I don't know, from a good player. You have the guy who's starting the season just on fire, and then when pitchers figure him out, or it can go the other way too, with pitchers and maybe hitters figuring them out, they don't know. These players, they may just not know how to refine their strategy to stay effective and competition evens out and then swings their opponent's way. It can really happen to hitters and pitchers, I think, for a lot of the same reasons. And you can tell when a guy's having a legitimately good season when he is able to adjust. So I'm not saying it's going to be one way or another for these Giants prospects. That's just one thing to be aware of. But still, all of that being the case, I think the Giants should just take their opening day roster decisions they need to make and make them on a current information basis. Whoever was hot, they should be on the opening day roster, and they should be locked into a starting role, at least for the beginning of the season. I still think it is the best option for the Giants to just take this on information basis because they are in need of production badly. They just don't want to fall into a situation where they can't replace these guys with anyone solid if they didn't turn out. That I think is where they get into a lot of trouble. The guys we think are good or not good and all of that. But I think I'd be willing to take the chance. I'd say the only real risk is if these guys should have had more minor league at-bats for some reason so that they could refine their approach. Like, say in Casey Schmidt's case, if he's going to come in, be real hot in the season, and he's going to be hitting home runs and all that for the month of April, then after that, let's say he cools down. If that happens, would we be saying he would have been better served to start the season in AAA and get some more training down there so that hopefully he would be better equipped to refine his approach and change his strategy when necessary when pitchers started adjusting to him in specific ways? Would we be saying that? Well, that might be a legitimate thing. That it could apply to Blake Sabol too, as hot as he's been. Say Blake Sabol's good for the month of April, and after that, pitchers get used to pitching to him and he can't handle it. I'm not saying I think that's the way it's going to be. What if it did turn out that way? Would we say he would have been better served if he had started in the minors? Well, maybe there'd be some legitimacy to that. So that's where the risk is. But I still think for the guys that have been super hot, it's a risk I'm probably willing to take to try to give the Giants a big offensive boost to start the season. And others could differ with me on that point. But it's just, honestly, that the way I'm looking at it, that you have to, there's kind of a principle of give and take in baseball. You kind of have to decide to take calculated risks to get whatever competitive advantages that you can. And I think these guys, I'm not sure if they did have to be sent to the minors at some point in 2023, I'm not sure it would mean they were ruined for the season. I mean, they could kind of go down there, and if they were, able to work on their approach and whatever, could be the key, and they could come back playing pretty strong. and you do look at David Villar in 2022. I don't think he was hot to begin with. I think his average was down and all that, and he came back and he hit really well, and he played strong and all that, and it's just, there are a lot of things we don't know how they're going to turn out, how prospects are going to train to play the game, how they're going to work out, and what hitters' approaches to plate discipline balanced with aggressiveness are actually going to be, what their mindset is, or pitchers, like which pitches they throw in what counts. I guess we don't know about all of this, so just taking everything as a whole, I think the Giants' best approach is to plan their roster for opening day in a way that most logically, based on what we've seen this spring training and last year, is going to get them scoring the most runs and giving up the least runs. And a mid-season fallout, that's the thing. It can't happen. But also, at the trade deadline, they need to look at their roster needs and and supply them and not just take some kind of middle ground like they did last year, because I didn't expect that to work and it sure didn't work. Thank you for watching. This has been Giants Baseball 101. Please subscribe if you haven't. Also, please leave your questions or comments in the comment section, and I will try to answer any questions you might have. I'll see you next time on Giants Baseball 101.